So, hello everyone, and welcome to our CuroNow Caregiver Circle. We are so glad you're here. And just as a recap, these sessions are for families who are navigating the caregiving journey, sometimes early, sometimes in the thick of it, and oftentimes wondering, I'm not even sure what I don't know yet. Today, we're going to talk about something that most families put off as long as possible, and that's end of life conversations. Not because they don't care, but because they don't really know how to start. And we have the perfect person to help us change that. I'll let Rukmini introduce her.
Thanks, Pat. We're so happy to welcome Kelly Briggs-Hayler today. Kelly is an end-of-life doula, and she brings a rare combination of deep passion, practical wisdom, and a gift for helping families find their footing in some of life's most tender moments. We invited Kelly because families deserve honest, grounded guidance, and Kelly delivers exactly that. Kelly, we're so grateful you're here.
I'm so happy to be here today. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so Kelly, let's just get started from the top. So,
Okay.
we're going to talk about your work and your role as a death doula. So, here's the first question. So, for people who may not know what a death doula is, how do you explain your work in a way that helps families really understand the role that you play?
It's a good question. So we are a non-medical support person, meaning we are there, we focus less on the medical, but we're more about presence, dignity, and making sure that no one has to face death alone. So we are able to help facilitate the different moving parts of what end of life looks like, and then also be able to advocate for the people that we're working for, and make sure that just like in a birthing doula, that if you've got a birthing plan and you create an end of life plan, and we're there to help make sure that your needs are met and it's executed properly.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I remember the birthing doulas that 16 years ago when mine was born. Well, so tell me more about this. How does your role work alongside hospice, palliative care, and medical teams, and where do you fit into that ecosystem?
So we are a little bit, unfortunately with hospice care, I've never met a hospice person, nurse, doctor that isn't just the most incredible person, but you have a limited amount of time to be able to spend with families and the person who might be in the position of passing. And so we are there because we have the time for more of that deeper engagement. We can answer questions. We're there to hold your hand. We're there to help guide, answer questions, do research, really help you navigate all the nuances of what end of life looks like. Because we don't only just work with someone who's actively dying, we also are in a support place for anyone who wants to start having these conversations at any point in their life. I strongly encourage people to have the conversation at any and every age because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And I always want to encourage us to think about these things for ourselves, but also what kind of instructions we want to leave for the people who we love, that we want to know that they have a guidebook on how to, what decisions to make on their behalf. So we work very closely with all of those entities, but we're really there as a support, and another person to help advocate.
Yeah, and
Makes so much sense.
this is like death is such a natural and inevitable part of life, but it's a scary thought,
Mm.
um, and then even scarier to talk to people about it. So let's delve a little bit into how to even start having these conversations. Like many adult children are juggling careers, families, caregiving responsibilities. What are some small ways families can begin talking about end of life preferences without the conversation feeling overwhelming?
That's totally fair. Look, people come to the table with all kinds of feelings, emotions, experiences around death and dying, and they're all very real and rooted and all need care, right? I think that's my thing is I want to meet you where you're at versus meet me where I'm at because I'm in a very different experience. And so I think for a lot of people, I try to encourage work on yourself first. Have those conversations with yourself. What would I want? What are the decisions I would want things done or in a way that, and so when you start to address those for yourself, it takes a little bit of the fear and the anxiety out of having that conversation broader. I am fully of the mindset that we, unfortunately, in the US, have really distanced ourselves from the process of death and dying, and we don't experience it like we used to. It's sort of packaged and put away, sort of behind the scenes in a way that I don't think a lot of people talk about or get close to. And I think I have found in working with families that the more you sort of talk about that, it lessens that fear and that anxiety. It doesn't, that unknowing becomes a little less, oh, well, this wasn't as awful as I thought it was going to be. It's not an easy conversation. I'm not going to pretend like it is. But
Yeah.
I think if you start that little chat with yourself and then maybe bring it to your partner or a sibling or a cousin or whomever and say, hey, have you thought about these things? And organically, slowly start to have those conversations, it does make people more receptive. I think also picking the right time, right? I think really making it, sometimes I say to couples, check in with each other and say, hey, on Thursday, could we spend an hour of time just sort of talking through this a little bit so it gives people time to prepare to be launched into such a deep conversation that could be really difficult to navigate, and then also gives you a window of time. This is only going to be an hour. We're going to talk about what we're going to talk about, and we're going to take a step back, and then we'll readdress it another time. So I think it's also baby steps. You don't have to eat the whole elephant, as they say. You could take the first bite and then work your way through.
Is there that's very helpful. Is there a specific time or event that works better? Like when I'm thinking about this, well, as I'm hearing you, is like family gatherings the better place? Or no, it's when two of us go away somewhere, a quieter time? Is it when there is a big event in our lives happening, a big job change that has precipitated me moving from one city to another, or I'm going to have babies? Is there anything like that, Kelly? Or you would say just it's independently, like whatever works for individuals?
Yeah, because you're all those examples, I say all of those are great opportunities. All my friends, when they started having babies, I said, hey, do you have your advanced directive done? And I know that's really hard for younger people to think about, but I always say, just think about your life in the next 3 to 5 years. Don't think about what you might want when you're 80 or 100 or 47. Like, really just think about what in the next 3 to 5 years, if something were to happen, what in this stage in my life would I need or want to have happen? That also helps not minimize, but also makes the conversation feel less expansive. I think people get really worried about, well, it's where I'm at now, but I don't know where I'm going to be. And what if I have kids or don't? There's all these factors that can kind of make it a little harder for you to make decisions. Think smaller. I think that it's always a good time. I think it's also knowing how your family engages around this topic. There's some people who a more quiet one-off conversation will be more appropriate, and sometimes a group conversation is more appropriate. It just really depends on who you're navigating this with and how their own personal feelings around death and dying, and being sensitive to that in their timing of when they're ready to talk about it.
That was super helpful, because I think what I heard from you is there's a key mindset shift, which is think about the next 3 to 5 years. Given where I am, what's happening in my life, if something were to happen now, how would I? Because you can always change this. It's not like
Everything is
written in
changeable.
stone. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I always say to people too, especially for an advanced directive. You don't need it notarized. A lawyer doesn't have to look over it. It is, you do have to have witnesses for it, but that's it. And you can change it, and you could do it on a Thursday and change it on Monday. It is movable because your life is movable and changeable. And so this document is as well.
Love it. Thank you.
I love that. From a timing perspective, let's keep pulling on that thread, Kelly.
Yeah.
So, and when I say thread, what I want to talk about what families wish they'd said earlier. So, in your experience, what are some of the conversations families most often wish they had started earlier?
Two things, and this is because this has been quite the subject for the past year, especially in the circle work, the work that I'm doing with doula clients. One, estate planning. Now, and I mean that you don't have to be a bazillionaire to think about estate planning. Honestly, I think thinking about what that might look like just as a family or a community of people who are supporting each other in their dying, just thinking about what that could look like. Are there any sort of things that we should think about long term? And you don't have to make any big decisions, but just thinking about estate planning, what that looks like, what that means for you is a great thing to just sort of kind of poke around in. And then the other thing I think families wish they had talked about sooner is when a person becomes a state where they're incapacitated and no longer able to make decisions for themselves, it's not knowing. What would they want? Would they want to be, do they want a DNR or do not resuscitate? Do they want to be on feeding tubes? Do they want to even hear, even if they're unconscious, do they want conversation to be held around them, around these topics? Those are the things that I find that are the real struggle for families when they're in that position where they can't get the answers from the person who's being affected and they just don't want to make a bad decision. They want to make sure they're honoring that person. And you're in a grieving, stressful place. So any information you could think about that you can leave as instruction, it is such a gift that you can give the people around you.
You're so right about that. So for families who want to be better prepared, what are some practical things that they can do now that make a meaningful difference later?
So I keep saying advanced directives. It's like sort of my repeat all the time. An advanced directive, essentially, every state has them. You can also just generally, you can create your own. A lot of hospitals are now starting to roll them out, which is really wonderful to see. Essentially, it's just a guidebook, and it goes through, again, if you are unable to advocate for yourself, what kind of pain management do you want? How much extension of life do you want? How much intervention? What would you like to do with even after death? Are you an organ donor? What are the parameters around organ donation? Because there are levels that you want to participate in. When I do them with people, there's a whole section where you can just add in anything you want. And so I do things like, what do you want your environment to be like? So there's smells or things that bring you comfort, or sound, music, television, people talking. I really want religious. What kind of things would you want on a religious basis that also, this is a difficult thing to say, but are there people in your life that you don't want to participate in this process, that you don't want to be a part of this? Because that's a very real thing. Look, our lives and our family structures can be very complicated, and there's no judgment in that. So in your process of death and dying, that you should also feel like you're surrounded by the people that you trust and want to be in that situation with you. And you have every right to make that decision and make those choices. And you can put that in your advanced directive. I always say more is better. So nothing too small is something to add in. If you have legacy things that you want to make sure are done, that there's letters somewhere for people or things you want to give away, put it all in your advanced directive. The more instruction you give is great. No one's ever said, "Oh, this is too much," when they're in these spaces and have to make these decisions. And a lot of families and communities I've worked with have said it has been such a great gift to just have it written down on paper. So there's less for them to try to figure out how to navigate, and they know they're honoring you.
That's such a great insight. I never would have thought about putting all those other things about my environment and then who I would want around me, because then your family feels more prepared.
Yeah,
every time.
And even, anyone who's supporting you, your hospice nurses, your death doulas, any information you can provide to them also helps them curate your care in a much better way. And it's reflective of you. I always say to people, you have a voice even through death. And that voice needs to be honored and should be honored. And even after death, you have a voice. So, I think that unfortunately when people go through when they're in that space of either hospice or palliative care, unfortunately, we think they sort of disappear. They don't. You're still living your life. It may not look like it looked before, but you are here and you have a voice and you have purchase here, and you're able to, that portion of your life should still be in control as much as we can honor those controls for you.
Beautifully said, Kelly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
A very specific question, Kelly. The advanced directives, you said they don't need lawyers, notary, or anything, but then you said something I think about each state has one. Is this like I am in Wisconsin, therefore I need to download the Wisconsin states? Like, what form do I start with?
So there's caregivers.org, I believe, has one that you can look by state. I will go to a state because some states ask the question about organ donation, and there's very specific
Okay.
state rules. And now that we're getting into more states becoming MAID states, which is medical aid in dying. New York just passed our legislation recently. Their parameters also differ by states that participate in that program. So sometimes if you look at a state, you'll notice that they have some additional questions that may not be. So Virginia's might be different than Michigan, than New York. They're not terribly different, but I always say just look at your state because there'll be restrictions that maybe I'm not aware of or you're not aware of, or questions that they may want to ask that might differ.
Yeah, so at least start with that, and then you can add in whatever details.
Exactly.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about the emotion around these moments? So I'm guessing you often see families during emotionally intense moments, right? What helps families stay connected and work together through these hard moments rather than becoming overwhelmed or divided?
I think no matter how much a family goes in with good intention, this is stressful, right? And we are actively grieving while we're supporting people through this process. And grief is a funny animal, honestly. It presents in the wildest ways for people at weird times for different reasons, what have you. So I think if we all approach this with that going in saying, I know I'm struggling, so I can only imagine the people in my circle are also struggling. So just giving each other just a little bit of grace that if we're short with each other, it's not intentional, or if something comes off funny, give it a little space and then come back to it later and say, hey, this conversation felt really not great. And can we kind of figure out how we can move through this a little bit better? I think the other thing is people, I even know in my family structure, some of us are great at some tasks and some of us aren't. So find out where people's strengths are, right? Like if you've got someone who is really great at the organization and wants to do the deep dive on the research and the websites, let them have it. And then give the person who's like, I can offer my physical time. I can clean, I can come and sit bedside, I can run errands. So really trying to figure out where everyone's strong suit is and trying to give them things that fits that has also been a great help in navigating where people can butt heads a little bit. And I think it's just the active communication. I think that's what draws me so much to the platform that you're building, is it's creating a place where we can all still be connected and not feel like we're being left out. Most of the time, when there's aggravation or disagreements, sometimes it really comes down to a lack of someone feeling like they've not been included, or that decisions have been made or discussed that they didn't know had happened. And so I think as much as you are open to sharing and communicating with each other, that helps alleviate things. It really does. And to know again, like, this kicks up our own mortality, right? It can't not as humans. And we're gonna act out because of that. And it's not always about you.
Yeah.
And sometimes taking a step back and reminding yourself, which is hard. Look, we're all people. We're peopling, and and I think it's just remembering that, it's all of this energy comes out of love and care. And sometimes it comes out a little funky. But it really comes from a really solid, good place for the most part in most people that I've dealt with. So
Yeah. And that's it's interesting that you highlighted the acting out part of this, because chances are the family's already gone through some hard moments already to get to this point. And one of the things we are hearing a lot is caregivers often carry a lot quietly. So the other end of the spectrum. And what do you notice they need the most, but maybe ask for the least, that you can see
rest,
that would really help them?
rest. Rest. The amount of burnout that I see on caregivers who feel like if they take a nap, if they take a shower, if they walk away for 5 minutes, they're not they're not caregiving enough, or something's going to happen in that moment. Um, and most of the time when I'm brought into a family situation, it's because there is a significant amount of burnout from the caregivers, and they're really afraid to ask for that rest. And it's not a I think understanding where they're coming from in that concern, and then working with them on the proper way to offer that rest for them.
Yeah.
Not ignoring where that worry comes from, not minimizing where that panic comes from. You know, I've been in a caregiving situation, and even as a death doula, I was in a caregiving situation for a full year with someone I cared very deeply, my grandmother, and I would walk out of the house to go to the grocery store and be like, oh, right, the whole world is still moving. To me, inside that house, we had a very different world that was going on than what was happening outside. And I had to remind myself, go out, go for a walk, go get coffee. Remind yourself that you are still part of an everyday system that's moving, because you can really start to feel very isolated in that space. And so, trying to offer people that are going through caregiving respite, a break, a chat, just stop by and drop off cookie, like whatever that looks like that you feel is good for them, um, is because I think a lot of caregivers feel like they've disappeared.
Yeah.
And I worry a lot about people in those spaces, and I also know, because so many more of us are in that now, of that caregiving and toggling that with our everyday life. It's really difficult to be in that position.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They give so much of themselves, right? And then they feel selfish if they take that self-care for just a few minutes to take that walk.
Right. And I say this to people all the time. If you go down, the whole system goes down. So, as much as you're caregiving for someone else, you also have to make sure you're caregiving yourself, because you won't be able to do the things you want if you haven't made sure you're taking your good care of yourself as best as you can. It's there's I blame no one for constant dedication of a person that they're caregiving at the end of life, ever, because I've been in that situation myself, and it's a beautiful thing to give. But you also, just if you take the moment to get a glass of water, get some fresh air, get some sunlight on your face, it's only a few moments. With technology nowadays, you could be texted if something is urgent. I really I encourage people to just try as best you can to take care of yourself in those small moments that you can do so.
Great
That is
advice.
very good advice, Kelly. And before I forget, one thing I wanted to tell our listeners is Kelly mentioned a couple of minutes ago estate planning. And we have in this caregiver circle before, we've had an elder care specialist lawyer, Amy Devine, come and talk to us a lot more about estate planning. So if that's something you're curious about, feel free to check out that video conversation.
Oh, that's
Thank
great that
you.
you've had that, because it's such a mystery for so many of us.
Yeah.
I mean, even just if you talk to a state person who can even tell you what to do. I think so many of us don't even know, after someone's passed, what's the first phone call you make? What
Yeah.
does the first few weeks look like? I think, there are deadlines for things, and there are things you have to think about. So unfortunately, as a culture, we just don't know. So I think any education you can prepare yourself with, just to alleviate that stress and frustration, is a good service to yourself.
Absolutely. So Kelly, I have just another question in terms of the scope of the end of life support. So does your support extend beyond the death itself? And if so, what does that look like?
Yes, absolutely. So, after, some families have asked for after death care, and that means we support people with body care, before funeral practices. We also support funeral process in itself. We do things like, uh, go with families when they're going for a direct cremation, family funeral services, end of life celebrations. We can use plenty of doulas that help, provide support in that space. Again, there are some families that do honor their loved ones by doing body care and things, and a lot of us are trained in how to facilitate that and support the family in that. And then it goes through also this estate things, like how do we close out the estate of a loved one? How do you navigate probate? Grief is massive. I think I've had a lot of people who reach out and say, I could really use some help navigating the grief that I'm going through. It's been, now that things have quieted down, now it's really, I'm sitting here. And unfortunately, again, I say, in our culture, we think we pack up grief in about 2 weeks after someone's passed, and that is not the reality at all. And so many of the people who are the caregivers, it's months after someone has passed that they finally have the quiet moment and things start to really come to center for them. So I think it's, making sure that we are supporting people in that space. And that can take quite a long time to navigate and go through. So, I mean, doulas, we're a really unique bunch because there's so much that we are still learning and taking on because because death and dying is changing very quickly in a lot of ways, which is really wonderful to see. And so many of us, as the longer we do this work, we find, oh, there's a need here that I didn't realize existed when I started doing doula work. So I want to step more into that. And so we could go all over. There's so many doulas that do all kinds of wonderful things that you wouldn't even think of, which is really remarkable. So I think that's what's great about meeting a doula is talking to them about kind of feeling out what the things that they can and are open to doing to be able to support a family.
Wow. Well, this sounds like the best place to end. And thank you so much for your time and your honesty, and just for the way you hold space for families in some of these hardest moments. We are so grateful that you shared this with our community, and to everyone else joining us today. This is exactly why we're building CuroNow, to help families feel a little less alone in these moments that Kelly just talked about, and to make it easier to start the conversations that matter. So thank you again, and we're glad you're here with us.
Thank you both so much. It's been a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I think anyone who wants to talk about this is such an important topic in our culture. So I'm just really honored that this is the work that you all are pursuing and the voices you're trying to amplify. So thank you both.
Thank you, Kelly.
We appreciate you, Kelly.
Thank you.